Which leads to our last final fun story. We always try to end on something either funny or ridiculous, and this one falls into the ridiculous category. I don't think we even covered this. I'm not sure what that says about us, but what last week or the week before, xAI, which of course is Elon Musk's AI company, introduced Grok 3, which at the time purported to beat most of the other major models on a series of benchmarks. And I think we from my standpoint anyway, it didn't raise it, up to my level of wanting to talk about it, mostly because I'm just exhausted talking about these incremental improvements model to model and this week's leaderboard and all of that.
Yeah.
I think what DeepSeek showed us was that we're seeing commoditization of this more than anything else, and these little minor breakthroughs are generally not going to be all that significant in the long run. But the drama, the soap opera of this is that an OpenAI engineer went and looked at this and looked at the benchmarks that xAI was using to claim, and apparently xAI didn't include one of these benchmarks that had, and I don't even pretend to understand all of it, but had they included it, then suddenly they wouldn't have exceeded OpenAI in the ways that they said they did. So the TechCrunch article headline is, "Did xAI lie about Grok 3's benchmarks?" And I feel like you just need a tub of popcorn and pull up a chair and watch this back and forth, because it's just the craziness of everyone trying to compete across these little benchmarks that frankly nobody really understands.
To me, this reminds me a lot of the data warehouse industry, where everybody tries to show how their data warehouse is the fastest and most powerful, based on a set of benchmarks that they are often cherry picking to demonstrate their own technology's best attributes. And I feel, and I'm not surprised to see that happening in the AI world as well. Honestly, I think a lot of the benchmarking in AI is not very useful, because the real value is going to come down to actually using it and testing it out. I think a proof of concept done at scale is always going to be much more useful than any particular benchmark. But I also, honestly, when I look at xAI right now, they kind of feel like a Me Too player to me. Yes, they have a massive data center in Memphis, Tennessee, which is just a technological marvel. I'm just gonna put that flat out. Like, it's amazing what scale they have created there. But as for the actual results, is it really any better or really even different from what is being created by the likes of OpenAI and Anthropic and Cohere and so many other competitors in the LLM space? It's just hard for me to really uh, point my finger to a place where I can say this is actually different in a meaningful way, other than to provide additional competition and another name on the list of benchmarked models.
Well, I think your example of data warehousing or the entire data space is actually very apropos, because the reason those benchmarks were so prevalent is nobody had any other way of measuring and comparing. And I remember talking to a CIO years ago and talking about how he was looking at a benchmark, and it was a totally different kind of benchmark. It wasn't actually a technical one. But I questioned him. I said, "Why? Why are you looking at that?" And it was like, "Well, I need a way to demonstrate how what we're doing is competing in the market and where we stand. I need some way of doing that." And I think these benchmarks will show the same thing. Right now, nobody truly understands it all that well. It's very hard to do those proof of concepts that you're talking about. And so that's what we have to go on, and that's what
Mhm.
we're using. But I think it speaks more to our relative ignorance and lack of actual use cases than it does anything else. So I think my advice of your CIO is, enjoy the popcorn, watch the back and forth, and mostly disregard all of it, and
Yeah,
and
I just
focus
find
on the
it
problem.
Yeah, I just find it hard to parse something like AIME 2025 Performance Definitive Teo Taxis Edition and compare a 90.8 to an 88. When what I really want to know is, does it help me close the books? Or does it help me answer customer questions? And I think that if we can get task or role based benchmarks that are actually aligned to our work, then we're talking about something useful. But these theoretical quantitative indexes just don't do it for me.
Yeah, and part of it, I think, is a function of what I just talked about. Part of it's a function, I think, of the geekiness of the fact we have a bunch of engineers at all these companies that are doing all of this. I think in the case specifically of Grok, what I think I'm curious about is that their big claim was that they had access to all of the Twitter data to train the models on, and that therefore, because that was quote unquote normal conversational sort of interactions, that it was going to therefore result in much more natural feeling interactions. And I don't know if that's actually been borne out. And the fact that they're not really hyping that any longer makes me wonder if, in fact, they're finding that's not actually proving to be true. But again, my all of that notwithstanding, I land in the same space. That is, as a CIO, I think you just tune all this out and you focus on your use cases and experiment with everything until you find what works for you.
Yes. And fortunately, it's not that hard to test any of these models out right now. Every company makes it relatively easy to get initial access and plug in and test your use case.